Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fierce Feminine Fridays. Today I am with Leslie Boyd. She is way on the other side, on the East Coast, and I'm sitting here eating my breakfast in sunny California, and she's already eating lunch. So, without further ado, let me just let Leslie introduce herself because we're going to be talking about, as you can see from the title, we're going to be talking about some slightly heavy issues, but I want to make sure we get to all the content. So, Leslie, take it away. Introduce yourself to the community.
Kylie, thank you so much for having me, and I'm so excited. So, yeah, I am Leslie Boyd, and I'm currently in a suburb outside of Charlotte, and that's going to be an important point as we get more. I'm married, and I have a stepson who's recently married, and I have two girls who are 14 and 16. So, I am a productivity coach, and I help women who work from home, and whether for themselves or for someone else, create balance in their life, to help them do all the things and still be able to concentrate on their goals, their personal goals, their career goals, whatever they're aspirational. Because, as women, we tend to make ourselves last. So we make the time to make ourselves first. So that's who I am.
Yes, and if you've been um, on my page for any place or time, that's why I have Leslie on here because we vibe on that same vein, right? I always teach you guys to put yourselves first, and even though you're a mom, you work, blah blah blah, right? We can't pour out from an empty cup. And I love that Leslie has, it's just 3 steps, 3-step strategies. And that's so simple. I love that concept. So, um, and I have a feeling that the 3-step strategy is something that you've used to get you to where you are today. So why don't you take us on a journey to um, where you came from and like the neighborhoods you grew up in and what you've experienced and how you ended up winning the school board election, because I just love that story.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in Virginia. So it was like an hour south of DC and 45 minutes north of Richmond. So you think, ooh, Richmond, DC, but it's smack dab in the middle, very small. And growing up in the town that I did, there was a naval base there. It's still there, and it's where my mom worked when I graduated from college. It's where I came back to work. So there were 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. So you can imagine that my whole life, when we graduated from high school, like we cried. We had gone to school with the same people. Like my maiden name is Lomax, so I had Dwayne Liming to my left and Dwayne Loving to my right, like my entire life. So growing
Same.
up that way, you
Yeah.
don't really know everybody. It's different now. Everybody has a house based on their income, or they live in a neighborhood based on the schools. Well, all of our houses looked the same pretty much. I mean, there were people that maybe had like better, but it just wasn't the focus. So you really didn't know really that you were different in terms of socioeconomic. You only knew you were different by like the color of your skin or the classes that you were in. So that was the main thing. We had 3-2-1 back then. I mean, I don't even think my high school didn't even have AP. I graduated in 1988. We were so small. I remember somebody taking an AP class on like an old computer that was like this thick, or like starting
Monochrome with the green letters,
with the
right?
green letters, and it was like trying to remote in. Like, I don't even know what 1988 remoting in was like.
Can't
So
even imagine,
I
right?
don't even know what that's so foreign. Um, so, we had 3 levels of classes, one being the lowest, 3 being the highest. So I remember in my 5th grade class, it was like the only Black person in my 5th grade class. And it wasn't because I was super, super smart. It's just there weren't that many of us. There were, I can count on one hand who were in my classes. And like, I remember my mom going into back to school night, and literally they're saying, "Oh, you must be Leslie's mom." And I was like, "Yeah," so
Yeah.
that's kind of, but it was fine. Now, I will say that I went to college in Virginia. I stayed in Virginia, and then I came back home. And then once I left and went to work in DC and went to North Carolina, when I would come back home, I would see people that I grew up with, and I would see things that were different than I had seen years before. They hadn't really left, and that's no disrespect. That's just what happened. They either stayed there and got married.
It's like Hawaii, nobody leaves.
Yeah, it's like they would stay, and they looked, and I was like, oh my gosh, they look so different. And I realized they look the same, and I don't mean physical. I just mean like they're like how they dress, how they talk, the things they said.
Right.
I realized how much I grew by leaving and not just having that. And I'm thinking, it just blew my mind when I went to one of my best friends, her father passed away, and I went to his viewing, and I was like, oh my gosh, were you always like that? And I was like, yeah, but I didn't know any different. So my whole point is, growing up, I could only be what I could see, right? I knew that people were lawyers, people were doctors, we had the naval base. I really didn't know what else was out there with that small town just trying to make it. And so that's one of the things when I met my husband. I went to work in DC still for the federal government, and I met my husband in 2001, and we got married in 2002. So at that point, I was on the fast track in the federal government, going to SCS. I had a management position. I was 31. That's where I was going. And then I got married, and my husband had a son, and he was in the South with his mom. And he said, I really want to move back. And I will never forget, he said to me, we were driving in a car. I had a cell phone on my hand. So, the cell phones were big back then. And he said to me, well, I was working on my master's. He said, well, we could live with my parents. You could quit, work on your master's full time, and not have to work. And he's thinking that was a good thing. I immediately freaked out, started crying, threw my cell phone. He talks about that now, acted like a fool, because I was like, that sounded like death to me. And again, that's just me, because I was on a different track, right? And I was like, you want me to give all that up to live with your mom and not work? Like, who would I be? And I didn't have kids at the point. We weren't engaged, but we weren't married. So in 2003, I had my daughter in November. And as soon as I had her and felt that love for a mother to her child, I knew what he meant, why he wanted to be near his son. And so that's when I opened my mind up to the possibilities. And in July of 2004, we moved to North Carolina. And when I tell you, this is where we need to be, and I don't ever want to leave, I think I'd throw another cell phone. And I just needed to trust God, needed to trust the process. But in doing so, I left behind all that I'd been working on. And I still work. I still had my job, but I had to leave the management position because back then there wasn't a lot of work from home.
Right, you have to all be in the same building in order to have the management position, right?
Right. So that was like now we have managers that are remote, but back then I was just happy that they let me work remotely. I mean, right. and they had an office here, so I was able to go squat, sit there. And so I had to give up my management position and work for a man that worked for me. And I was like, and I was fine with that. But when I got here though, that's when the transition happened, because I came back to the land of, in my neighborhood, none of the moms worked. Some of them worked, but they had their own business at home. So it was kind of like I had one foot in, and then I was like, what do I do now? Back then remote was different. The things I was working on, I had to really make my own programs and make my own projects. And I remember some days sitting there by myself, because I was sitting in literally an office that I know was a closet. It was like a janitorial closet. Yeah. And I'm happy they let me sit there, but imagine going from all these people to go into a closet.
No, I feel you.
Yeah, I remember telling my husband, because he got the job here that I should have had. So we joked about it. He had this, area supervisor, all this responsibility, and I had to sit in the closet job. And it was like, I should have had his job and he should have had mine, but we said the Lord wanted us to work through this. And so in doing so, I had to figure out how I could still be fulfilled in my purpose while sitting in a closet. And so that's what led me to, volunteering. It led me to, doing the things. And then I had my second daughter was born in 2005. So I had two kids 22 months apart. So it was perfect timing for me to have that low stress job while I was raising the family. He had a high stress job. So I had to kind of fill in. So, we talked about it, and I said, that's when I realized I could only do what I could do, setting myself up to do more when I couldn't do more, realizing there's a season for everything. And then I worked it out. I had two kids. I say I was wiping noses and butts like at the same time and working and doing all the
Yeah.
things. I remember after I came back from maternity leave, I had a project in Atlanta, and so that's 4 hours from here. But I flew there. I literally flew at 6 o'clock in the morning. Took my breast pump with me, like pumped in like a closet, like bought it back. Those are the types of things that
Yeah.
I'm doing. And that's when I realized that I had to come up with a system to not make myself go crazy. We all have that point,
Yes.
that breaking point, and we all know when we're getting there. So that's when I came up with, I started doing 3 steps way back before it became a thing. I said, what little
You
bit
can
can
use
I
this for yourself. You're like, how
Right.
can I keep my sanity? Let
Right.
me just find a system that works for me, and then
Right.
I'm going to do it. And then people look at you and like, how do you do all? Right?
Oh
How
my
do you
gosh,
do all?
that's when I realized people would say, well, I don't know how you do it all. And they would say it in a way like they were envious, not in a bad way, but they thought I was a unicorn. They thought that I was just something special. I was like, oh, no. Let me tell you how. And that's when I realized that I had to share it. And all of that, as my kids got a little bit older, I mean, not all, but like they're 14 and 16. I didn't wait until now. I did what I could as one would get into school, and I only had one in daycare. I would move the envelope up. As they both got in school, I moved the envelope up. So when they were in the 3rd and 5th grade, I ran for the school board. And one of the things that I always advise my clients is to bring your family in on the discussion. Even though they were in 3rd grade, they were in the 5th grade, I said, Mommy, I've been on chairs of other boards, the domestic violence chair in my county, the only domestic violence shelter. And here's another thing. I couldn't just get on a board. Like, I'd end up being the chair. Like, my husband said, well, can't you just be on it? I was like, no, that's not really my thing. I got to kind of lead the thing.
Well, it's not even a thing. I have the same problem is right. You just become a member. You just want to be supportive. And then all of a sudden you get promoted to leadership.
Yeah.
Right? Because you take action, you take initiative, you're organized, and then you have all these ideas, you start speaking up in meetings, and they automatically just gravitate to you as the leader. Right?
Exactly. And so that's why when I had if anybody had ever told me I'd be an elected official, I actually uttered the words, I'd never be able to be an elected official. Those are the words that I uttered. So we got together and we talked about it. And at the time, of course, I was doing card making. I always had a little side thing. I've always had 2 things going on, whether I had my my day job, and then I had a side hustle, or I had a, real job and I volunteered. I've always felt a way to do what I had to do while working to do what I wanted to do. And that was the key. I had, my federal career, I was so deep into it. I couldn't abandon that. I still haven't abandoned it. But how can I fulfill my real purpose until I can let that go? And that's what my journey's always been. What can I do to live in my purpose? Doing what I have to do so that I can do what I want to do. And that's been the game at whatever level I can. It may look different for everyone. It's looked different for me from point A to point B.
Yeah, and what God was bringing to me during quarantine was there's a lot of women who keep themselves busy just to, they have so much going on and they just keep themselves busy and distracted, right? Well, the enemy is trying to keep them distracted and distracting them from their purpose, because how many women out there are not stepping into their calling? They're not stepping into their God-given purpose. And I mean, look at it. Guys, the enemy is winning. Like, ultimately, we know who wins. But
absolutely,
if more of us women step into our calling, into our purpose, no, I'm not downing any men, but men don't have a problem stepping in. Like, oh yeah, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do, and then they go for it. But there's something with women that we feel obligated to, as mothers, right? We feel obligated as mothers to do the mother thing and the this thing and the that thing, and we have to be 100% in all areas at 100% of the time, and it's
Right, and I call that the either or syndrome. So we
yeah,
think we have to have either this or or. So I'm like, I'm an and. We can do this. And so for me, my why is my family. So you think, well, if your why is your family, why are you working away from your family? Because I work so that I can be present for them when it means the most. I don't prescribe to the, oh my gosh, when your kids come in, drop everything syndrome, because life doesn't work. Life is not going to drop everything for them to make
no,
it through. So I say to them, they come to me and I'm in the middle. I say, what you have to say is very important to me and I want to hear it. But if you give me 5 minutes, then I can be 100% in tuned into what you say. Because if I'm only 50% in tune, they can pick it up. A child can
yes,
pick up the BS in 2 seconds. And there's nothing wrong with that. I remember my youngest saying to me about a year ago, she goes, well, when I have children, she goes, she wants to be, I don't know, right now an OBGYN. So she's 14. So she says, when I have children, I want to stay home with them. And I said to her, are you upset that I didn't stay home with you? And she said to me, you didn't? I was like, okay, we'll go with that, because I didn't say,
oh, right, you were working from home, so
well, and even back when I wasn't working from home when she went
oh,
to daycare. And so, but because of the way I was at everything, I was present. I didn't bemoan,
wow,
oh my gosh, I feel so bad that I couldn't. It didn't impact her to a way that I think she thought. And then as she got older, I was working
mhm.
from home. So my point is, she didn't even remember those days when I wasn't here.
Right. But she remembers the love and the
Yeah.
care. Yeah.
Yes. And so it can absolutely, you can do that. And it's the way in which you do it and how you do it. We're always going to have mom guilt. It doesn't matter. You're always going to go to bed at night wishing you had said or done something different. But I'm here to say that it gets better.
Yeah.
Less of those moments, because as your kids get older, you have those conversations and you say, I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry we
Mhm.
wasn't, and you can talk it through and get it over with. When they're little, I remember going through thinking, well, kids don't remember stuff until they're like 5. And, maybe I would like snap and she's 3. Okay, well, she won't remember that. I like in 4. Okay, she won't. Okay, she's going to start remembering. I mean, we play enough tricks on our mind that we just have to move forward and know that we're modeling for our
Yeah.
children. My daughter was saying something yesterday, and she said, okay, I get it. You don't have to give me the 30-minute motivational talk. We had it yesterday, and so it's funny how the
Oh, yeah.
conversation,
My kids tell me the same thing.
she's like, are you about to coach me? I was like, probably, they know, they recognize, they know mommy's about to go live. Oh, what do you say to your clients? And it's like a joke, but they really do hear it and they really recognize the moments for what it is. So I say, keep on, doing you and being you. And I remember when I ran for the school board, I literally had something that summer every single day, whether it was a lunch, whether it was a breakfast, in the month before, I was gone every night. It's
Right.
just what
Just
it
the
was. And
networking and just being with, yeah.
yeah, but I will tell you this, my daughter was in the 5th grade and she came to me like a month before my election. She says, I want to run for student body president. I was like, yay. And I'm thinking, I'm already running a campaign. But, it was perfect. She had to get signatures on the playground. Her sister was in the 3rd grade, walking around the playground saying, you need to vote for my sister. I'm like, okay. And we had early voting. A lot of places have early voting. And the Thursday before the Tuesday election, I found out my daughter won for 5th grade. And I thought, this is a good sign. So that year we both won. And when back then we would rotate schools for the school board meetings, and the
Oh,
January school board meeting was at her school, and they let her do the pledge of allegiance, and I got to give her a pen, and it was so, she had her
oh my
election
God, that's so
as well.
sweet.
Yeah, so it was like a very full circle moment. And
Yeah.
then she ran in the 7th grade and was 7th grade to the bar. So then I was like, it makes it all worth it. All that time that you're second guessing, and you're wondering, it's so worth it to just
Yeah.
go the path and not fight it.
I know. I kind of wanted to go rewind the tape a little bit and go back. Did you have any second thoughts and second guessing? Because we offline we talked about the old boy,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh
That
yeah.
thing.
Oh yeah. So I'm in Union County, which is it's got like 230,000 people, but it's an older. It's been around a lot, so it's got a lot of square footage, and so a majority of the people are over on the western side of the county where I live, and everybody that's in Union County is here for the schools because it's built up now and there's more. So people think, oh, you live outside of Charlotte, but we're like 30 minutes from uptown because we're bougie here. We call it uptown instead of downtown, but whatever.
Yeah, Uptown Funk.
Uptown, yeah. So you get in the little western bubble. So I ran at large, which means everybody in the county could vote for me. So there's 6 districts. I'm in one
Okay.
district, but I was running for at large. And I was running against 2 men, 2 white men. And when I would meet with people, I knew that District 4, that's the most eastern part, that's where the farmers, they vote in every election. And where I live, there's more populated, but people are like, oh, I'm playing tennis today. I'm going to the country. Oh, it's time to vote. And I'm not even trying. It's just how it is.
Right. That's just the way of life.
It's just the way it is. And the people, they're used to voting. So people are like, you really need to win over District 4. So I remember meeting with county commissioners, and he said, and it's politics, right? And so that's when I said I was a mom that wanted to affect change. But very quickly, it's all about the votes. It's all about and the politics. I remember I went into this place. There's just this place, and so Monroe was kind of like the middle of Union County. And so I remember going in the Hilltop. There's this restaurant, and I was in with the county commissioner, and I walked in, and already, people like they could tell I was different, and people were like, "Hey, Mr. So and so," like, "Hey." We went to a booth, and he's trying to. There at that time, the school board had sued the county, and there was a lot of animosity.
Wow.
And he said, "Listen, I can get you some votes." He's like, "We meet at the old house every Wednesday." And he said to me, the old house has been around since the 50s. He's like, so you can imagine what it used to be, but and I thought, oh, wow. And women don't go to the old house. So
yeah. So yeah, if like for the audience, if you can imagine what happened in the 50s when leaders got together, like what type of people were in the old house. So
yeah. And so there's a lot of, the people, there's a lot of, politicians and strong people. He's like, I could get you like 100 votes. And I was thinking, and that's what you want when you're running. You want to go into, like, I go to the neighborhood, like in my neighborhood, I'm the one that people say, okay, I know you're up on everything. Who should I vote for? And then I could have like 100 people. And so you want to reach out to those people who have influence, because you can't talk to everyone. You've got 230,000 people and accounting. You want to talk to the people that have to reach. But I just thought, wow. And and he was very upfront. It's like, this is what it is. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, wow. Like, just okay. And
right.
and
but it allowed you the opportunity to step inside a doorway that you would never have gotten the opportunity to walk through.
Oh, definitely. I mean, especially not as a woman, especially not as a Black woman. I mean, even women don't even go there. I don't even know of any Black men that go there. And
yeah,
it's just like, you think like, wow. And these are like politicians, like DAs and different people that make the decisions. And so it helps you understand the people that you're going to be around. And so that was the first one. And then the second one is I drove an hour to meet with a farmer that people told me I needed to meet with. He's very influential. And so I literally drove out, and it had a granary. Now, I grew up in the country, so I knew what these, and I rode in. And so the one thing that I would do is I would always dress where I was going. Like, I knew that was not the place to wear a suit. So I wore my khakis and my little shirt that said Leslie Boyd for Boyd of Education, Boyd for Boyd. And I got out of the car, and some of the people, like, they looked at me like, and I don't even know if they meant, but they looked like they knew I was out of place.
Yeah.
I bebopped in, and it was like one of those modular trailers like you see on site for construction. And I walked in, I'm here to see Mr. So-and-so. And she said, okay. Literally, she couldn't even and
You were in such shock that she just didn't know how to
she
respond.
couldn't even cover it up, And
Yeah.
so I walked in and I'm like, hey. And so we talked and he was very, I mean, that was probably one of the best meetings because he was
Yeah.
very challenging. He asked me very challenging questions and it gave me insight. See, that's the thing. We
Yeah.
want to go in with how we're going to change, but you have to understand the thinking of the people that are going to support you or not support you, what they're thinking, because that's why you get in and you have the city slickers coming in saying, we're going to do, they weren't interested. He said, I went to school, there were 50 of us in a classroom. We did fine. We think teachers are whiners, and so if I'm out saying, oh, we're going to lessen class, the number of people in the classroom, and that's not going to speak to them.
No.
So it was important to know how people thought that we're going to support you. And even as eye-opening, I was like, wow. And I remember that there were two men running. And I remember the sheriff telling the one guy, he's like, that lady, she's going to beat you because she's everywhere. And I talked to everyone that would talk to me, even if I didn't think they'd be a supporter. And I set that precedence to say, even after I won, I would still talk to the people that didn't vote for me because I told them after I won, you didn't vote for me, but I'm yours. I'm all you got, so we got to
Right.
later.
Right, because even though you didn't vote for me, I am still your rep at large.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was important for me to go everywhere and not just cater to, who I thought I could win. And in doing so, I learned so much. I learned when it came time to put a bond on the ballot, what the people over here thought and what the people over here thought. Like people didn't know where I was from. Like I'm over in the western part and literally the teachers get like $200 or $300 a Christmas. The support staff, the parents just chip in, even if we chipped in $20. And when I went to deliver to the eastern part, the women would start talking to me and go, the women over in the west, we've got people over there. Front staff, they get like $100 gift cards, and the people over there. Now they didn't know where I was from.
Oh, yeah.
I guess they just assumed because I was like, yeah, those are my schools. I didn't say that, but you get a lot of insight into how people think so that when you are making decisions, it's not just about the messaging, it's about how you can address their concerns too. Exactly. So I learned a whole lot and being visible helped. And I remember I went to so there's 12 towns in Union County. So they have their own mayor. And I made a point, I was going to go to each one of their meetings because they have a 3-minute public comments. And I got in the public comments and told them I was running. And I went to one town in August. And literally when I got out there, the guy said to me, so are you with the news? And I said, at least he didn't ask if I were the help, but they knew that I was out of place. But he said, are you with the news? And, that kind of stuff helped me. But going outside of my comfort zone into the unknown, but it let me see there was a lot of work to be done. A lot. And it's just now really starting to turn the corner in 2020 after everything was going on. And I ran in 2014.
So 2014 is not that long ago.
I know. There was a school here on Parkwood and their mascot was a rebel. And it caused like the NAACP, they were trying to get the name changed, but you can imagine there's a lot of people that went to Parkwood for years. There were only 3 schools, and Parkwood is one of them. And there's people that have deep-seated. They're like, it's the rebels. It doesn't mean anything. But the kids would come to school like with the rebel flag belt buckle, and some of the black kids wouldn't feel comfortable. So they tried to go through a name change, and it never worked. Well, the school board a few days ago, they voted they're going to change the name. And so
nice.
So it's taken a lot of what's happened in 2020, but people have been fighting for that. So that's kind of, where we're going with that and being places and seeing people saying, with me being the subtle, person on the board, well, Leslie, that I can tell you this. I mean, I get well, you and your husband have worked very hard for what you have. So what does that mean? Other people haven't? They were saying I'm not the typical, single mom, kids thugging out, so that's what they put me as a unicorn, as opposed to the fact there's a whole bunch of people like me that work hard and their spouse works hard. It was almost wanting to make me be the exception and not the rule. And that's what I saw a lot of. And I was like, no, I really do know a lot of people like me. You just don't know a lot of people like me.
Right. And I mean, it's because like what gets broadcasted on media, it's like, if you look like this, then you are like this. I mean, right? I mean, Hawaii's been part of the United States since the 1950s, right? People still ask if they need a passport to go to Hawaii.
Right.
Or just when my husband was in school, like when I was in school, they and I went to the military, they're like, oh, what's it like? And like they think we live in grass huts or we have like dirt roads. And I'm like, and even when we moved from Hawaii to California this year, and like, oh, LA traffic. I'm like, have you driven in rush hour traffic in Honolulu? I mean, I don't drive since I work from home here, right? But like, all the times I've been on the freeway, like Hawaii is just worse because we only have like so many lanes. Like in California, you have land, so you can keep expanding.
Right.
A lot of our roads in Hawaii are built on bridges, right? Or they go through mountains. It's tunnels, and so it's like you can't expand. Like once there's more cars on the road, and like you're a public office, so you understand these things that I'm saying. So it's like you can't. Once the road is there, you can't. You just have to adjust. And yeah, it's just funny, the stereotypes that we see. And like I'm a Disney fan, so Disney is like a whole nother thing. But when you see yourself on screen,
right,
or your culture on screen, how does it make you feel? And there's this ride in Disneyland called the Tiki Room. And it's supposed to be like, oh, tikis are from Hawaii. And I'm like, there's no tikis in Hawaii. So we go in there and because it's one of those things that it's like near the Jungle Cruise, and I've never been there. All the years I've been to Disneyland, I never even knew about it. So we walk in, and then it's so culturally like misappropriated. I was like in shock. Like, is that what people think Hawaii is? Steel guitar music, and they're singing this song, and like a popular Hawaiian song, and
right.
Like, watched it. I'm like, do you know that this is a war chant?
Right.
And they're making it into this, like, oh my gosh. So
like, all you have to do is talk to somebody. Talk to any one person.
Someone. Yeah. And there's a lot of like industry leaders in Hawaii, because my brother's in the film industry. So there's a lot of up and coming film industry artists that are from Hawaii, but it's like, oh, if you're from Hawaii, Hawaii's like small potatoes.
Right.
It's like, no, like I see what I see here, and I see businesses in Hawaii. I'm like, why do businesses here not have things that we have in Hawaii? I don't know if it's like a smaller footprint so we can be more innovative, or but I'm like, yes, Hawaii's not a small town, or
right.
Like we're not small town living. Like there's like patches of small town living on different areas, but the majority of Hawaii is very metropolis.
Right. Oh yeah.
Or very metropolitan, whatever.
Yeah.
And all of this to say that because when you were growing up, you are very proud of your age. I don't know if you want to say how old you are.
Oh yeah, I'll be 50 in October.
Because I'm like, girl, if I'm right, we don't tell on each other's age, but look how good you look for 50. So this is give you props for that. But if you're 50 now, when you were growing up, I know you told me a story about when you were in high school, growing up with your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you want to tell that story, but you can.
Yeah, I just remember like my mom used to, and I think the whole point of this is like whenever your parents are telling you a story when you're growing up, especially if it's about a situation, that you gotta expect that the opposite is being told. So my friend and I mean, she's like my dearest friend even till this day. And we've grown. We've been friends since we were 11, so we've grown. And my mom always said to me, so my friend was white, and she'd say to me, and this was like 1983 on, to like 88. And she'd say, if you and her go for the same job, she's probably going to get it because she's white. And she said, not 100%, but she might. And so she said, my whole goal is don't be mad at her for that because it's not her fault that she's white. There's nothing she can do. And so I grew up, like I see a lot of people when we're talking about white privilege and they feel like, well, I shouldn't feel guilty because I'm white. No, you should absolutely not feel guilty for being who you are and what you choose to do with your white privilege. And that's up to you, but you should never feel guilty for the skin that you're born in ever. And so I never from a young age, she said, don't be mad at her. She can't help it. But I just want you to know that and don't let it affect your friendship, but just be aware. And it wasn't a victim mentality. It was more of a realist, like I'm an optimistic realist, and so I go all in, but I always know the possibilities. It's like when I was running for the school board, it was so funny because I never thought I was going to lose. And so I think you can't go into something like that thinking you're going to lose. But it wasn't until I started doing early voting and I saw people voting for me, but I saw people voting for other people. I thought, oh my God, I could lose. And so, so then I remember we both applied for the same college. And we were like, there was one person in between us in our class rank. And so I found out a week before her that I got in. And so I'd had this conversation in my house. So I remember when I got my acceptance, she said, well, you and I are exactly the same. There isn't a reason that I should get in. And just the way she said it, and we kept going, I knew that her family had a separate conversation about affirmative action. And I was like, and I don't know, it just didn't click with me. Wow. Like they've had another conversation. So that's when I started to see it's not just one-sided, these conversations that happen. And I thought, wow, it just struck me when she said, I thought, wow. And even at 17, realizing that, we both got in, life was good, but I often wonder if she hadn't, like, what would have happened? We didn't have to, but it did.
Right. Like if it was a little animosity.
Yeah. And I wonder, and I'm pretty sure her parents did the same thing, it's not her fault, or whatever, but it opened my eyes up even then in 1987, you think in the 80s, but the town that I grew up in, we all know that Brown versus Board of Education was in 1954, but our schools in my small town did not integrate until 1970.
Wow.
And that was because they were going to get federal funding taken away from them. So really, integration had only happened like 17 years before, like the year I was born. So, I get that. So it's just those conversations and those understandings from what seems like so long ago, but it's really not that long ago.
No, and it's not. I mean, with innovation and technology, we feel like from when I was in high school and what we have now, it's like light years. But still, like you look at what's happening in culture and society, there's not a lot of growth that has happened. I mean, even as a Hawaiian people, right? We are the brown people, and we do have white people that move in. I think there's more Asian domination in Hawaii versus the white. But,
right.
Because we're so close to Asia, right?
Right.
So the rich people from Asia come and they buy us out. So we have gentrification, but it's Asians that are gentrifying our society versus the white people because they have the money. There's all these business tycoons in Southeast Asia or whatever, and they're buying us out, and we can't even afford to live in our own town. I mean, that's part of the reason why we moved here. We got downsized. You know, the company that my husband and I worked for got downsized, and there was an opportunity to transfer to a branch here in California. So we took the opportunity.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I know you moved for a different reason, but it's still like when you know, when will we all, like, not that I want to be equal to everyone, but when are we going to see people equally? When is that filter going to?
Well, I think that what we're especially seeing in the college kids, and I'm seeing it in my friends' kids, a lot of the change that's happening. And even in my own kids, you know, they're pretty much growing up similar to mine, not the small town, but in terms of the racial makeup of the schools. You know, they're not in a very diverse area. So they're seeing that. And I see, you know, my daughter is getting involved a little bit, like my older one getting more involved. And I think that every generation has always hoped that the next generation would take us there. But I'm really actively seeing that in like the millennials and the ones coming after them. And I have so much hope and just how much support and the things that are happening. I really think that when we look back at 2020, it's going to be a pivotal year for a lot of reasons. And having this pause and having people not being able to run away from things, you just kind of at home doing your thing. I really think that this is a pivotal year. I see it in a lot of the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and I have a lot of hope.
Yeah,
I do. A lot being not standing for things. They're making a change. They're not afraid. Like women like my age, like I remember saying, well, I can't wait until I get to be 60 or 65, and you just don't care what people think. You know, I'm thinking by the time you live to 65 or 70, you say what you want because you don't care. Your friend's starting to die or whatever. You know, you're like, I don't care.
Oh,
and
yeah. That's my grandma. She does have no filter. None.
Right. She's like, well, I've lived this long. I've got, and I envy that. I envied that for so long because I felt like I had to be so politically correct and, you know, speaking out on some of the things.
Or even if because you are in the public eye as an officer.
Yeah, it was, we had a public discussion with one of our school board members, and he was accused of making a couple staff members uncomfortable with some of the things he said. And he's like, you know, I didn't say it, you know, and I think he didn't mean it to come out. And so I remember at the meeting that I came out and I said, I know what they're saying to be true because you said those same things to me. And it was like the silence was deafening. And I said, you thought talking about, you know, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to be funny, you know, but it's not funny. You don't, to fit in with someone else, just be yourself. You don't have to come to me and say you like, you know, pork ribs or whatever because you think black people like pork ribs or whatever. You know, you don't have to. You don't have to do that. You don't have to appropriate.
Because they're just playing into the stereotype. Just
exactly.
like I hate pineapple on my pizza, and whoever said that pineapple belongs in Hawaii. So pineapple actually is a symbol of plantation in Hawaii, right? That guy came and he planted pineapples, and then everybody ended up working in the fields.
Right.
And so that's a symbol. I didn't realize it until just this year that the pineapple is the symbol of, you know, of racism and plantation work and all of that in Hawaii. I was like, oh my goodness. Like I wasn't even that woke, you know. But yeah, my kids are woke. You know, my kids are telling me about all these things, and like I'm forwarding them things. They're like, "Oh yeah, we saw that earlier." I'm like, "Oh, like I'm not trying to live in my hole, but I'm also not trying to get myself exposed to too much of the negative pieces of media."
Right, of course. But
as a parent, I want to make sure my kids are like they're educated, and that we're not passing the torch of racism to the next generation.
Absolutely.
I'm guilty. In Hawaii, there's so many racial jokes, you know, and it's I feel like I just grew up in a different space. Like being here in California, right? There's neighborhoods that are still segregated. It's like I live in a predominantly Japanese district here, and then there's a Korean district, and like in Hawaii, I mean, there are districts that are predominantly a certain race, but like people are still kind of more more melting pot than in other areas. And I went to a predominantly Hawaiian school because it was funded with money from the Hawaiian monarchy. So I grew up with all Hawaiians, but we were all mixed. It was like Hawaiian and, like what are your nationalities or whatever. Um, and so for me to see it like in real life, like I'm watching the LA riots in 2020, like it's different, back in the 90s. When you're watching it, I'm on an island like far, far away. And then I'm watching it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just there.
Right, right.
I was just there on that street. And that's why, I started this Fierce Feminine Friday series, because listening to you, right? We were in a community together and we had that conversation that one day when this all started happening. And it's like, I am not woke.
Right.
And if I can use my platform to spread your message, and promote women, I don't know, like Black women, women of color, people who not are disadvantaged, but just if you look at society as a whole, we've not come out.
Right.
We've
Right.
not been appreciated for who we are, just as we are. It's like Obi and I were talking, like she was talking about the filter. Like when you walk into a room, everyone has a filter because it's part of our safety and security mechanism, right? And like if like I'm not even going to use color, but if your father has hurt you in the past, any person that comes at you like a father figure or a dominating male will automatically be part, like you automatically, like there's some part of you that will react.
Right, right.
Or for me, mine was my stepmom. Like she and I didn't get along. So anytime some female wants to dominate me, I'm like,
Right, right.
And it's just, recognizing those patterns. But when we see the pattern, it's instead of reacting to it, once we become woke, right? I probably using the term wrong, but that's what I hear my kids say.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but once we awaken to the trigger, it's like, oh, right, you can decide, how am I going to respond? Am I going to respond in the same way and let my gut reaction take the course, or am I going to choose something new?
Right.
Am I going to evolve? Am I going to like recognize, oh my gosh, I just did a racial slur. Huh. That's okay. I recognize that I said that, or some kind, not a slur, but just a racial stereotype.
Right.
Oh, that's my bad. Okay. And shift. That's all we have to do. We just choose to shift. I'm like, oh, like maybe Leslie has a 3-step strategy on how to like shift our mindset away, from what we don't want to do into something new. I don't know. Do you have anything like that?
Well, I mean, the only thing I always say, and I think part of that is education and sitting with it. So the first thing is when you say something and it doesn't feel right to you, then kind of say, well, why doesn't it feel right? So just kind of say, what about that doesn't feel right? And then examine your values, the things that are important to you. And you say, well, where does that fall in? Because the only way we can grow and to learn is to make mistakes. So you have to accept that and to think that we're always going to say things perfectly. And even if we say something and it hits us a little way, investigate why it hits you that, and do that self-reflection. Don't go and ask someone else, is that, because people aren't going to say, some people might say, well, it hit me. No one person speaks for all people. right? So, the first thing is investigate. Why did it hit you that way? See where it hit you, and then do some research. Like, I love the book, the White Fragility and How to Be an Anti-Racist, and that's for all races. And just open your mind up to another point of view that we didn't even know existed. And that will start to say, well, how does that sit? Always see challenge. Are you coming from it defensively? Are you coming from it because you don't agree with it, or it hits you? So whenever that emotion hits you, the first thing you can do is challenge that emotion and say, why did it hit me that way? And when you investigate that, you'll get to the deeper trigger as opposed to whatever it is that you said. And that's when you begin to change it or recognize it or sit with it or deal with it or whatever, analyze it. So that's the thing. Why did it hit me that way?
Yeah. And I know a lot of times there's such a knee-jerk reaction when we get hit. It's like, oh, and then you automatically default to what makes it go away. Because it's not that it's painful, but it's, it hits you that way. And you're like, oh, well, I don't want to feel this because it's not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But when we sit in the discomfort, that's when change starts to happen.
Right. We have to start being comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's the first thing. Have to be uncomfortable with being, all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And say, like, starting this series was very uncomfortable for me.
Mm-hmm.
I had to start, getting on the phone with people and inviting people to have this conversation. And like, how do you start a conversation about this topic when I'm approaching someone and what I want to speak on? And, when it's like, if God brought this idea to me, right, then I should fulfill it. And whether it's uncomfortable or not, who needs to hear this message today? Or who needs to hear it down the road? And even like for you, like running for office, I'm sure that was not comfortable at all. But, you understood, or I don't even know, but like you shifted the perspective of your community just by taking action.
Mm-hmm. And I had people that supported me, and whenever, like, the 4 years I served, whenever something would come up, people would say, well, if you agree with it or you support it, then we don't even question it, because they knew my values. Didn't mean I was always going to get it right, but they knew that at least I would investigate it. At least I would, it wasn't just because somebody told me to, or I made a deal with someone for a vote.
Mm.
They would trust my motives as to what I was doing, because I was very honest with people as to, I'd have people, the NAACP said, so what are you going to do for the Black teachers? And I said, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to fight for all teachers. And as part of that, I'm going to make sure that they're equally represented, that, each child should see somebody that looks like them or feels comfortable in their school building or school surroundings, and not just be the janitor. I said, but I'm not going to be the spokesperson for just Black teachers, because that'll put me in a vacuum. I've got to be there for all teachers. And they were like, oh, initially, I'm sure that wasn't the answer that they expected. But I got so much more support. I remember leaving that meeting with people, they were guarded because I hadn't really been over on that side of town. I was over in the West. Just being Black wasn't good enough. It's like, do you understand what I'm saying? And I got so much support from them, from being open and honest, than just telling everybody, oh, yeah.
What you want to hear, right? I mean, as much as people want to hear what they want to hear, they know it's a front. Like,
yes, people
are on radar. Yeah. And they know when we're not resonating with our true selves, that we're just spouting off junk. And I like that. I mean, I've only known you for a short amount of time, but what I understand about you is why you're teaching women the 3-step strategy is that we become authentic. We align ourselves with our authentic purpose, and get rid of the riffraff, get rid of the distraction, so that we can step into the fullness of who we're meant to be.
Exactly. And that's what I say, we're being selfish. When we don't put our God-given talents into the world, when we hold back, we're doing a disservice. We have that gift. We have a duty to put it out there, no matter how scared we get. The imposter syndrome, the fear of failure, the fear of success. Just like when I ran for the award, I realized quickly, winning is just the first step. Making
Right.
over 54,000 children, 42,000 children. Woo! That was tough, because people, you're a mom. When it comes to the children, there's nothing like getting Mama and Papa Bear mad when you're talking about little Johnny or little Susie,
Right.
and you're talking about redistricting, or you're talking about. So the real work began once I got in office. So that's when the fear of success. I was like, "Ooh, what if I win?"
Right. Right. Or even when people or women that you work with are scared to step out and start a business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, scared, start. And
Yeah.
then they starting is the first step there as well. And then there's all these other uphill battles. But it, like the women that I worked with, yes, the things that we fight are uphill battles. But my gosh, why do people like mountain climbing? It's scary.
Right.
It's death defying. But when you get to the top, like say Mount Everest, like it's so thrilling. Like it's because not a lot of people go there. You're able to see a view that nobody else has seen.
Right.
And that's like the exhilaration that you get once you reach the summit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. In Hawaiian we have a phrase called kulia ikanu'u, strive for the summit or strive for success. And it's using the mountain as an example. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So for those women who are out there today, who, you're ready to take the next step. Like it doesn't have to be 3 steps. It can just be 1 step today.
Yeah. I just say no more than, I like to say 3 because as women, we have like these mile-long lists. And so they're like, oh my God, I can't, just only 3, I've got 100. I'm like, how many did you have yesterday? Like 100. How many you have today? 100. So can you do 3 today? Okay, just trust me on the process. So yes, if 1 is what you can do, then just do 1. Yes, but just the consistent, that the deal is, if you do 3 steps a day, Monday through Friday, that's 15 action items in 1 week. That's 60 in a month. You do 1, that's 30. That's like moving the needle. All I want you to do is move the needle and have realistic expectations of yourself, of your time. And so of those 3 steps, 1 should be, take a walk, take a bath, so it doesn't have to be everything work related. I work with my clients. I'm like, so what are your goals? And they're like, I want to build this. And I'm like, so what are you going to do personally? What? Like, didn't you tell me you wanted to eat some healthy meals this week? You wanted to walk 5 miles this week? Oh, I'm always bringing it back to the personal, because we're more than just our work. We're more than just a mom. We're more than a wife. We're all of that together. And it takes all of that to get us to our center. Well, I can't hear you all of a sudden.
Oh, my bad. I muted myself because they're doing yard work.
Okay. I was like, I see your mouth going. I'm like, did we lose?
Sorry, I was trying to be all things and then nothing. Yeah, I was just saying that, for women who are, who want to take the next step with you and want to learn more about what you do, I just wanted to share with them that you have an awesome Facebook community, which is great. Like if you need accountability and you need, like she does the 3-step strategy, but she also talks about what are you doing today?
Right.
What are you doing today? If today's Friday, it's the end of the week. And like, if you're interested, I highly suggest that you join her community, go back and look at what she's talked about this week. You have the weekend if you want to just get started, and then Monday, start fresh.
Start fresh. And I always say start where you are. we get caught up in yearly planning. I like annualized planning or 60, 90-day planning, because you can say today, July 10th, I'm starting today, 30 days from today, annual, 12 months from today. So you don't have to wait, because what happens is you think, oh my gosh, half the year's over. Oh, I may as well just give up. No, 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 no. And for me, we don't have the 6 months we have, but we got 6 months left. I'm always the half full. So,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. And it's July, we just started Q3. What better time to get your stuff together and right? Quarantines. I'm not saying quarantine's over, but that season is over. That Q2 is over where we had
Right.
all of that stuff happening. What better time to start over? And what better place to start over than with Leslie, who's obviously overcome a lot, and she can help you just start where you are.
Yep.
There's no better time than now to get started.
Absolutely.
So if you're interested in that, here's the link right here below. I also left the link in the chat for you to step over. Look at that. Step over to the three-step
on over
to the three-step community. And like really, and yeah, just really tap into what God is speaking to you right now in this season. And I know this, right? I'm following a lot of my prophetic friends online, and everyone's talking about this is a season of acceleration, right? We've come out of the slump. Right now, God is accelerating us into our next move. And I highly encourage you to join Leslie's three-step community and get into the acceleration mode and step into your God-given purpose today. So don't wait.
Yep.
Amen.
Yes.
So have a great weekend, everyone. And thank you, Leslie, for being here and sharing your story, sharing how, you've come out of so much. I mean, you and I talked offline. You've come out of so much other things that we've shared today. But yeah, so go follow Leslie. She talks about a lot of the other things that she's come out from, and her story is such a great success story. And I'm just so proud to know you, Leslie. And
thank you. I'm equally proud to know you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Like just I'm overcome with grace that you've come here today to share what you've overcome and what you've done in your life. And like you're 50. Woo, woo.
I know.
It's like you're only halfway done. Like,
oh, I know.
And I mean, I can just see what God's going to be doing in your life and how you're going to be helping this woman and like leading change in in women who are starting these online businesses. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Today. And with that, we'll see you. Don't forget to join. Talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
We're going to be here next week, Friday again, for another Fierce Feminine Fridays. Thanks. Bye.